successful.
The Marketplace Master Plan Pedestrian and Bicycle Facilities. I'm assuming that Maru is not here, right?
Yeah, Senior Planner Muter said I was not able to be here, but Mark is here to present, and I'll let you take it away as I set up your presentation.
Okay, great. My name is Mark Steffen. I'm the president of City Center Realty Partners. We're the developer of the Emeryville Public Market. We were in front of your committee, I think about a year ago, to present to you our plan at that time. We had a good discussion. We felt you gave us good feedback on the needs for pedestrian and bicycle transportation. And we've met several times after that with the Planning Commission, city staff, and so we've refined the plan from the last time you saw it. So what I'd like to do now is ask our architect, Christopher, to come up, run through the plan, give you a brief overview of what the master plan looks like so you can orient yourself, and then we'll address the pedestrian and bike and transportation access.
Thanks, Mark. I'm Christopher Pizzi with Hart Howerton. We're the master planners, and we're also the architects for, and landscape architects for Shellmount Street and the park extension and a couple of the parcels. And there's a kind of wide team that's involved as well. Next slide. I think you know the existing site. I'm going to speed through this. I think you're relatively familiar with it. I hope you are. Next slide. This is the current status of the overall master plan, which includes relocated Shellmount. It also includes 4 new blocks, which are currently under design.
New, what do you call it?
Pardon?
Blocks.
4 new
Blocks,
blocks,
okay.
new kind of parcels. Plus the kind of expansion of Christie Park here. And there are kind of 2 main things to keep in mind. The first is that we've been getting ongoing input, and this reflects the ongoing input and comments that we've been receiving for the last year or so. And the second is that the kind of highlight of all of that feedback is that instead of us considering kind of one piece at a time, that we look at the kind of entire scope of the project from 64th to the tracks to Christie and kind of out to this edge. So what we've been doing is trying to keep that entire area in mind as we've been developing the particular pieces. Further to that, we've kind of mapped that our current scheme is consistent with the original PDP, especially in terms of heights, which affected use from some of the adjacent properties. In particular, we've brought this block down to 50 feet on this half, which we think also makes a much better pedestrian environment. So I'm just going to talk about kind of 5 key aspects of the plan: the overall phasing of it, the bicycle aspect, the pedestrian environment, and then transit and vehicles. And when we get to transit, Jeff Tumlin from Nelson Nygaard will help me out. Next slide. So this is beginning the kind of master plan itself. This is the reorganized Shellmount with a mixed-use parking garage. Next slide. Phasing. Next slide. So the first phase, our current phasing, this may be a little different from what you've seen before. The first phase is to rebuild this central piece of Shellmount with a grocery store on what we're calling parcel C. This would be parcel A, parcel B, parcel C, parcel D, and there is the new part.
Can you tell me the timing of the first phase, that what you're showing there in red?
I think we're hoping to proceed with it just as soon as we can get it approved.
So within the next few months it would start?
Well, no, we need to get final FDP approval. We've been in front of the Planning Commission several times. We're going to be back in front of them in January, and we're hoping to be able to get the FDP approval for that in February or March. And then we would need to do the working drawings and get a permit. So we're hoping to start this, the road realignment sort of summer of 15, and then we're hoping to start the grocery store at the end of 15.
So the road would start to be torn up and realigned this summer?
Well, no, the existing road was going to stay exactly where it is. We'll build the new road first. See, so what happens is this is a configuration of the existing road. That'll stay in place. Right now, this is a driveway in front, so we'll improve this to the city standard here. And once that's ready to open, then we close that, so there won't be any impact.
And how long will that take?
It's about 3 to 4 months on the road.
Okay.
Depends on what we find in the soils, because the soils are
Suspect.
yeah,
Next slide. The second phase is the kind of rebuild and expansion of Christie Park. Next slide.
What year would that be? What year are we talking?
It's probably looking at, part of what we have to deal with here is parking. As you know, we've got service parking, we have to convert it into structured parking. And so it's probably gonna be 16 or 17 is when that happens. Depends on how we, the rest of it figure.
And then the third phase allows the other components, parcel A, parcel B could happen following the reorganization of Shellmound Street, parcel D, which would be a residential, and the remainder of parcel C, which would also be more residential. And then with each one of those phases, the additional kind of streetscape improvements would happen concurrently with that project. Next slide. And then here's an aerial view of what that could look like. Here is Shellmound. This is the existing office tower. Here's the four-story parking garage along the tracks. Here's the existing pedestrian bridge from Amtrak, which comes through the parcel A mixed-use residential building, also consistent with the PDP. And it comes down at a grand stair and a transit hub, which we'll get to shortly. There's the grocery store with parking above. This is the parcel D residential building, and the rebuilt Christie Park is over here. Next slide. Okay, bicycles. Next slide. So a key aspect of enhancing the original PDP was the bicycle plan. Some of this is pretty similar to what you may have seen before.
What is PDP?
The preliminary development.
It's like the plan unit development.
It's something like a PUD or something like a specific plan.
What we're
The
going
whole
for-
project is a PUD, but
Right.
I'm talking about PED, plan unit PUD.
Well, it's called a PDP,
Okay, all right.
planning vernacular, and then what we're going for is the FDP, which is basically design review, you can correct me if
It's
I'm
the
wrong.
final.
That's it, okay, okay. Go ahead.
So I think the key bicycle feature is that there are bike lanes, 6-foot bike lanes, which on both sides, so going in both directions along Shellmound. Beyond Shellmound, these additional streets and drives are relatively bike-friendly, very low-speed traffic. This entire length is probably about 500 feet, so the vehicle speeds are pretty low. There are also bicycle facilities throughout, bicycle parking. We're thinking there would be some bike share facilities as well. This is where the transit hub is planned, which we'll get to also fairly shortly. Next slide. And this is kind of an aerial view looking at the redesigned Shellmound, which would have one lane of traffic in two directions, a 6-foot bike lane in each direction, striped, and there would be a limited amount of on-street parking on either side. Next slide. Here's a view of that Shellmound. This is the retail base of the parking garage, and there you can see the bike lanes. Next slide. Here's another view of Shellmound. This is looking up. This is the base of the Marketplace Tower, so you're looking north, right before Shellmound makes a bend, and you can see some of the streetscape design and the landscape and the bike lanes. And then, so this is from your bike map. This is kind of where we'll be just jogging here, but it's consistent with this, which will hopefully eventually lead you over to the bridge, plugging into that larger network.
I'm sorry, can I stop you for 1 second? I just want to understand the connection once it's realigned.
Mm-hmm.
Where right now it goes under Powell, I guess it's Shellmound Street, goes under Powell Street. How far are you redesigning the street and going to put in those green bike lanes? All the way down to the bridge, or like how far is that going?
Generally just going from the hotel to 64th Street.
So I guess what I'm trying to
So-
align that with is the existing condition, because one of the things that I would like to tee up here is that there is a gap in our bike network, and this is not really, it's a little side issue, but there's a gap, and last month I asked what was going on with that, and Mike Roberts said that it was waiting for this, and I guess what I'm asking is that gap going to be addressed, or is it outside your project area?
It's out of because we don't own that portion. Our
Okay,
property
so the
stops
block
just
where
on
the-
north end of Hyatt, the north end of the Hyatt.
Okay.
our property stops.
So the block of Shell Mound that's missing a bike connection is not going to be changed by this project. So I just want to I'm sorry to interrupt your project, but I just want to say to staff that I would really, we approved this and the BPAC addressed it in August of 2013, and I think it was waiting for the CIP. And I hope that staff will reconsider now that the CIP has been approved and there'll be more Measure BB money. There's a lack of safety there right now, and I know Emeryville is really concerned about liability, and I think it's a liability issue that we have a gap. I think that the plan we approved, I don't think will be terribly expensive. It's mostly paint. So I hope the city will go ahead with that and not wait for this project. So thank you for letting me interrupt. And thank you for clarifying that.
Next slide. Next slide, please. In the pedestrian environment, we also heard that we should look at the entire area, and what we've highlighted in blue are sidewalks and pedestrian-friendly areas, usually with the minimum city standards, and often areas that are more pedestrian-oriented, which would just kind of tolerate some drive-through traffic, like this plaza at 62nd here. This is a shopping alley, as you know, and there are several areas along Shell Mound where the sidewalk is widened into small plazas.
We plan to have restaurants and sites spill out, cafe tables, activate the sidewalk. Maybe because you can talk about the widths of the sidewalk along Shell Mound.
Yeah, so generally the widths around along Shell Mound are 12 to 16 feet. It's generally tree lined and there is some planting. It's 12 to 16 feet here, 14 feet as a base width here, and then it kind of pushes and pulls depending on what is adjacent to it or what the uses are that overflow onto it. Next slide. Here's another view of some of those retail uses at the Parcel B building with some of the landscaping. Next slide. And then what we also heard from lots of the different stakeholders was to keep the sidewalks activated. So what we're showing here, and the way we've revised the design, was that we were trying to maximize the amount of active use which fronted onto the pedestrian realm. So that's residential, it's commercial, it's retail, it's food and beverage, it's residential amenity spaces. Like at this residential building, the amenity zone is along here, along Shell Mound, which is something that we heard. 63rd would be designed as a residential street with townhouses overlooking it in both directions. And then there is the existing retail here and new retail frontages proposed here. So we're really trying to activate that pedestrian realm.
It's like liner retail.
Liner retail.
I really think those overhangs are great on
And then this may be your first look at a proposal for 63rd Street, which would have residential on both sides. This is the view toward the tower in the background, and there's the new Christie Park at the end. And here's a view from the park looking east toward that residential building with some retail at the corner there, and this is looking toward the 62nd Street Plaza there. Next slide. Then we get to transit, and I'll right now turn over to Jeff Cumlin, who's a transportation planner.
Good evening. So street design doesn't get any more interesting than Shell Mound Street, in part because it is pretty much of very high importance for every single mode of transportation. And we have a strong desire to keep the street as narrow as practicable, both to make it really walkable, really easy to cross as a pedestrian, and also to make sure that we've got enough depth to be able to have real active uses on both sides of the street for as much of it as we can. So we try to keep the cross-section really tight while still accommodating all modes of transportation. So the other thing that we wanted to recognize is the special importance of the Amtrak station as not only an important node for this part of Emeryville, but really for the region, and to connect the two sides also with all modes of transportation, including making sure that it's possible to get over the railroad tracks to bikes using elevators, but also that it's friendly as pedestrians. It also means that where the project connects to Shell Mound over here becomes an important transit node, both for AC Transit as well as for Emeryville Round. But that it's not the only node for transit. But there's another important node that's over here on Christie at the expanded Christie Park. Next slide. Part of the complexity of dealing with transit is that we've got a a rich mix of services. Some of them, like the Transbay buses, turn around in this general vicinity, but a lot of them continue through, including the 26 and I think it's the, I always forget the Transbay numbers. The
JZ.
Yeah. But the Emeryville is basically turning around at 65th Street. So we've got a situation where we've got two really important stops on our site, but also several less important sites with a distributed system of transit. You'll also notice that you've got transit running on the same street Shellmount as we've got a lot of bike activity. Next slide. So before we get into that, the one thing that I wanted to point out is the importance of, see, these are the railroad tracks, this is Shellmount, and this is the existing pedestrian bridge over the railroad tracks. So the project got redesigned to extend the pedestrian bridge basically all the way to Shellmount with a grand stair that leads to a new retail plaza. Be a very important arrival place for the project area and also for the city. With retail actually on both sides of the street and a really important zone here for buses, for drop-off, as well as for people traveling through. Next slide. Here's another view of that straight on to the existing bridge, showing the elevated plaza and the stair coming down to the sidewalk level, and the existing, or the improved bike lanes.
What happens to the space under the bridge?
Yeah, why don't bikes get up and down the stairs?
So where is the elevator connection?
It's right here. They're actually showing the current design.
Oh,
This
that's-
is something like a glass enclosed elevator.
Gotcha.
So I'm
Funicular,
really
consider funicular.
confused, because we saw the parcel A, right? This is right next to parcel A.
Yeah.
It
some
was a
people-
different design.
It was a completely
Yes.
different
It
design,
was.
okay. And the other design allowed for bicycles that had a long slope with a bicycle channel that bikes could walk up. On this side, you can't do anything with the Amtrak side, obviously.
Right.
Has that been abandoned in this
The
design?
reason for that change, because the design you saw before had that
Had a
coming on
turn.
this end and coming down.
Yeah, yeah.
We like that, but staff did not prefer that. And the original PDP had the connection coming straight across through here. And they strongly suggested that we switch the access to come through the middle of the project. And because of the grade changes, it's hard to start at this elevation and get down to here in that distance. And you can't, any
It's a
kind of
shorter
bike trough,
distance.
much shorter distance. So the bike trough would be really steep. I imagine we could probably maybe incorporate something of those stairs, I don't know. But it's-
Funicular. How about-
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're in funicular territory, and so, from a cost effectiveness and just orientation standpoint, a standard elevator does the trick.
So the elevator goes up to an intermediate level, and then a bicycle would walk across and then take another elevator, or wheel
Yeah,
up from the
there's-
other side?
This elevator on Shellmount would come up here, you go across, and then you would continue across, and then you take the elevator down on
Okay.
Yeah.
the
So
Existing
it's
east
elevator.
side.
just
Same
one
level,
level
yeah.
of
Right.
elevator. I will say that that elevator, as in the existing condition, is a deterrent.
Yes.
For some people, it is often really disgusting, and there's a feeling of lack of safety that some people have, and I, not me particularly, but I have neighbors who do not like to go on that elevator at night.
Yeah, I mean,
So I don't know,
hopefully that's something that the transit developer on that side can.
yeah, you
can
can't do
address
anything with that
elevator,
side,
but
but.
we are cognizant about that's why this design is good glass, why it's open, so it's visible. And also through this crossway through here, it's gonna be landscaped, and the idea is to make it much like the Highline Park in New York. So it's a place where it's attractive, it's not just a cold space, it's a warm space.
Yeah, but everybody says Highline Park in New York. Everybody says that.
That's right.
Fortunately,
You know how many projects are gonna be the Highline Park?
You know, it's a good idea.
Fortunately, it's both a residential and a retail project, so there'll actually be eyes facing onto this area, and a very, very high incentive to maintain a strong sense of quality and personal security, at least on this side.
Will there be residential access to the path itself
Yes, there will be.
at the higher level?
On both sides.
That's good.
Yeah.
And they have their own plazas that also access, internal plazas that access this connection.
Are you almost finished? We're starting to break into questions.
What does it look like under the Powell Street Bridge with your project?
There is part,
Okay.
it's underneath that bridge is part.
Are you almost finished with your?
Yeah, let me go through, next slide. Actually, just go ahead and go down, that's just parking. So a couple of important details we wanted to talk with you about are how we're addressing the potential conflicts between buses and bikes. So what we're proposing is, so the travel lanes are measured at 11 feet currently, the bike lanes at 6 and the parking lanes at 8. So one of the questions is about the detail of striping the bike facility. There's room for a 2-foot buffer between the bike lane and the on-street parking. There are different organizations, different municipalities have different feelings about striping detail. So that's something we would like some guidance on. The other issue is around how to handle the bike lane at the bus stops. So as drawn, this is the elevated walkways coming across here. This is the stair and the elevator. This is the guitar center over here. So we have one bus stop on street right there and another one just near side of this intersection over here. We're proposing, given the right-of-way constraints, that the buses, they're stop, drop, and go, but they're stopping in the traffic lane, like in an urban location. So cars behind the bus will have to wait for passengers to get off and get on. You know, it's 5-9 seconds or so. But better from a safety perspective, so that the buses don't have to merge back into traffic, and prioritizes the higher capacity mode of transportation. So a clear decision was made there, and we want guidance on that. The other decision that we recommended was that rather than having the cyclists have to either stop behind the bus or merge around the bus to the left, that instead there would be a channel between the bus stop and the sidewalk where cyclists traveling in the northbound direction can bypass the bus stop, and there'd be an island for transit passengers to wait. And similarly in the southbound direction, there'd be a channel to allow southbound cyclists to bypass the bus stop as well. I've got a couple of images of those as well. All right, there's some images here that you can probably not see, but I think I've got bigger ones for
We
them.
actually saw that last meeting with Strong when he made that proposal in Cerritos.
Yeah, it's looking very familiar, maybe that's why, you know.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's a fairly typical situation, particularly where you've got streetcars or light rail, where you don't want cyclists to be merging to the left of those vehicles. So it's something that Portland does a lot, that San Francisco is considering now for a couple of specific locations. Other things, of course, that we're building into the project are lots of measures to reduce automobile dependency, encourage transit use, and ride sharing. So bike station facility, bike repair, car share, and ride share built into the project. Next. Here's some detail on the bike facilities. These are images, both of these from Portland, where there's a bike channel that bypasses the transit stop. Here's a detail of that in the southbound direction and the northbound direction. And cross-section, again, 11-foot travel lanes, 12 to 14-foot sidewalks, 6-foot bike lane, 8-foot parking. Next. And finally, very quickly on vehicles, basically keeping the motor vehicle configuration similar to as it is today. You'll notice a small amount of on-street parking on Shell Mound, which is important to us for ensuring the retail success. So not that many spaces, but enough to offer what we call teaser parking that encourages people to think that they can get that prime Marilyn Monroe parking space, and when they can't, to drive straight into the garage.
Rock star park.
Yeah, exactly. Some proposals for changes to some of the intersections. So the current 2 intersections that are currently stop sign controlled would likely be signalized in order to make the access in and out of the 2 garages more smooth. Everything else effectively the same in terms of automobile circulation. Next. Some more images. And now we can take more questions. Yes.
Talk about the buses stopping and then having the cars stop behind them. That works fine if you have pedestrians getting off, or if you have a bus where wheelchairs can just come down the ramp. But a number of the buses require that the bus driver get out and use a lift of some sort to put the wheelchairs off and on. And
Yes.
oftentimes it doesn't go quite as quickly or something.
Yeah, so fortunately for the AC transit buses, the low floor buses load wheelchairs really, really quickly. So there's very little delay.
But Emeryville also goes through Shellmount.
Yes, exactly, and so I'm not sure what Emeryville Round's plan is. We're actually meeting with them this Thursday in terms of speeding up wheelchair loadings, or to what degree wheelchair loading is a significant delay problem.
Yeah, I just know that
But it could be
I've been on the Emeryville Round a number
Yeah.
of times where it just really cannot, sometimes it goes very smoothly, but not always.
I think it depends
Well,
on the class.
it either happens in 2 or 3 minutes, or it can take 10 or 15 minutes because something sticks, or there's just some sort of a problem or another.
They have some old buses.
Yes, they do have some buses.
What was the width of the bus waiting island?
The way we put them in is at 8 feet, so that meets the ADA requirements and provides plenty of place, not only for wheelchair loading, but for the passengers to have a place to wait that's not either in the bikeway or on the sidewalk.
Okay, I have 4 comment dash questions, so tell me real quick. Who do I speak to?
Ask the question, we'll decide.
Okay, are you guys aware of the general plan's central core idea regarding building heights?
Yes.
Because you're talking about stepping down, rather in an area where you actually should be stepping
Well,
up.
one of the issues was on parcel A, right when you come across the bridge, we had a design, it was a taller building.
Yeah, it was really
But
tall.
the residents across the railroad tracks,
Terraces, yeah.
they were very concerned about their block views, and so that's why that portion of it is down to.
The central core was identified in the general plan as
Right.
a positive thing
Right.
that we want to try to have happen.
Part of the other issue is economics, because the office market today is not, that's one use of taller buildings, and the office market is not nearly as
It's all
strong.
rental. right?
Yeah, I mean, we are, like our office.
Just so you know,
building now,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
We identified the central core as not just something that we would allow, it's something that we want.
Right, I understand that.
So in
Part
other
of-
words, we consider it a positive, a net positive.
No, I understand that.
So-
Part of the other issue too, like for housing, look at the high-rise housing, so you're talking 150 feet, that's usually steel or concrete construction. It's usually 30 to 40% more expensive to build.
But we don't care about that.
Why do you?
We don't
But
care
you
about
also
it.
don't want bankrupt, empty buildings too.
Well, we're trying to
So-
build what we
yeah.
want to build.
Yeah, I understand.
Can I just interrupt and say, that's a planning commission
Yeah.
thing, not really a BPAC thing?
Yeah, that's true.
So maybe we could,
Well, it's sort of BPAC, I mean, it's psychology of space.
well,
No,
but
I
there
don't
is
think
another.
it's
It's sort of under our purview. Okay, well, let's move along. You're saying it's too expensive and the residents don't like it. Okay, let me go move to the next question. I understand what you're saying. But I'm just sort of warning that might be an issue.
Very aware.
Moving forward, that could be an issue. It would be an issue with me, but I like the central core idea, and it is in the general plan. Okay, next one is a quick question that you guys can answer quickly. And I'm pretty sure I already know the answer. Your first iteration here was that we're gonna have private sidewalks not owned by the city of Emeryville. Are the
There'll be an easement for public access across all the sidewalks.
okay, wait a minute. Are the sidewalks owned by the city of Emeryville?
Well, it depends on where in the project. The ones in Shellmount, I believe the way it's laid out is on public property, right? It's public. It's private. But we'll have easements on all
Okay,
those. for
just so
public
you know.
access. I know your issue, because we met with this, you brought it up last year.
This whole committee
And we
likes
also
the
said to
idea.
you- I know, we said to you last year, it'll all be public access, so that people
Well,
can.
So it can be taken away. Just so you know, I'm just warning you.
No, I know.
Moving forward, if these are not public
And
sidewalks,
they will be.
there's
We've already made
there's
that
gonna be a
clear.
huge problem here. I mean, it's not just that we're gonna be allowed to use the sidewalks, they are going to be owned by the public, or else you're gonna have a huge hill to climb. This is gonna be a heavy lift. Just so you know, make them public. Make the sidewalks public. And wherever they are public now, by God, they're staying public. And wherever new sidewalks are coming in, we want them public. Okay, so no way you
Lot
can.
line adjustments? you think?
Well, just so that every other sidewalk in, like the sidewalk here, just like that. As long as it's exactly like that, in terms of jurisdiction, you won't have a problem.
Well, except the
Just
city
just
wouldn't have an issue with that, because then they have to maintain it.
Whatever,
The
yeah, whatever
sidewalk
deal
in
they
front of
want.
my house is
No, you have to
probably
sweep your
not
sidewalk in
public.
front of your head. No, you don't have to, the city doesn't maintain it. Just, what I'm saying, just, it's gonna be like the rest of Emeryville, in the triangle, and here at City Hall. It's gonna be like, the sidewalks here are gonna be like the sidewalks in this location. Just so you know, or else it's big trouble, okay? Just a warning. And nobody here in this committee will disagree with me on this.
I disagree with you.
Okay, Ken will disagree, of course, Ken. Next one, real quick here. So this is from a bicycle and pedestrian viewpoint, and also just from the general public. Every project, this is a PUD, it's planned unit development. Every big project has pluses or pros and cons. We know what the cons are. It's a lot of with this project. It's gonna be a huge amount of increased traffic, auto traffic, pollution, whatever. There's a big list of cons. What can you tell us? What are the pros here? Why should we want this to happen to our city?
Why you should want it is that we're creating a place. Our whole vision here is to create a place where people want to come and hang out. So right now, you don't have in the city of Emeryville sort of a central gathering meeting place.
Which every developer tells us this. I'm just warning. There's another warning. Every developer tells us this.
Brian, let him speak.
Well, I know, but I'm just.
You asked me, and I'm going to tell you.
Okay, all right.
So and also I would tell you, the other developers haven't maybe curated the same product mix that we're going to have. We're talking about not national brands. We're talking about with regard to the food hall, we're renovating that food hall, putting in new local vendors, people that have unique food offerings you don't find in the average mall or food hall. So there's a reason to come there. We're going to be adding retailers, unique purveyors. The park's going to be redone. So it's a reason where people are going to want to come and hang out. It's a place where you're going to want to spend time, not just to go shop and eat. And then the other thing is we're adding housing, so which makes it another gathering point. So that's the benefit. We're providing housing and a space where people want to spend time. And we're spending a lot of time over the last year taking input from all the community and the committees to come up with a plan that meets all the needs. The people that want a place to run their dogs and walk their dogs, pedestrian folks, the bike guys, car share, transit. We're trying to do a really strong job of mitigating private car usage.
Okay.
I think,
thank you for that.
can I just add to that?
Okay.
I think Mark's talked about a lot of the great specifics of what the project is going to be, but at the larger scale, like you were just mentioning, the general plan calls for this development. We may not be maxing out the full capacity of what's allowed in the general plan, but the general plan certainly calls for all of these parcels to be developed.
Sure, yes, it does.
Which is approved and,
Yeah.
you know,
But,
which I think is the city's vision for what you want there.
Okay, I wanted to hear what, we know what the cons are, I want to hear what the pros are. And just before I move to my last question here real quick, just as a courtesy to you, you should know that, that anybody that's older than, 25 and lived in Emeryville, we've heard, every developer says the same thing. Just so you know, this is a courtesy to you, I'm telling you. As you move this project forward, every developer says the same thing. So,
Which is?
what you just said. It's gonna be a hub, there's gonna be a lot of interaction on the sidewalks, gonna be activated, there's gonna be a place where people will wanna gather. This is what we're always told, to see like Bay Street was gonna be that. And it's a shopping mall, it's a regional, and we did a survey of over 400 Emeryville residents. Emeryville residents almost never use Bay
And
Street.
that's because of the type of tenants that.
Yeah, okay, all right, so I'm just warning you, this is a courtesy to you. I'm telling you, as you move this project forward, you might want to sharpen your argument with that. Okay, now last thing I want to say here quickly. Regarding the retail, there's new ideas in Emeryville about retail that I find really compelling, and others are finding it compelling. And this is, developers will swoop into our town and tell us about all this wonderful retail we're gonna get, the kind of retail we all want, which is locally serving, formula, non-chain. We're tired of fast food and mattress stores and that kind of stuff. We're always told that not to worry, we want this project to be a successful project. It can't be successful if we have that kind of retail. So we are on your side. It's a win-win here. And then the developer does the project, goes away, we get the mattress store. So what we're doing with Sherwin-Williams, we're talking about doing is a new paradigm. And you should be aware of this, and I'm going to try to have this happen with this project. We need it in writing from the developer regarding what we're gonna get vis-a-vis retail. And if you have to, deliver what you promise you're gonna deliver, you're gonna do it by subsidizing the rent of the tenants.
I think you're starting to get off topic here.
It's a little bit biped, it's a little bit, well, no, it is, it's to have a walkable neighborhood, you don't wanna
I
have,
understand.
we've talked
I
about this in the
understand
past. So I'm just almost.
It's your Walker's Manifesto.
It is,
Okay.
yeah. So just so you know, warning, this is coming also. In other words, you're gonna need to have this in writing, and you're gonna have to subsidize, show proof to us that people are gonna deliver the kind of retail that you say you're gonna get, and we're not just gonna take your word for it. We think you're wonderful people, trustworthy, but, get it in writing. That's, trust but verify. So just so you know, that's coming, and thank you.
Can I ask some questions?
Please.
Okay, so I want to say I like the bus stop with the island and the bikes going around. That's great for me as a bicyclist. I endorse that. You said that you were going to put in a signal because of going into a parking lot where there's now, I guess, a stop sign near there. So my question is, how is it going to be automated or is it going to be sensor activated? Is it going to be a push button for pedestrians and a sensor for cars and bikes? And if so, sensors can be a real problem for bikes, and it can be a problem for pedestrians who don't know they have to push the sensor if they're not from here, et cetera. So I guess, do you know what kind of signal?
I mean, I think
Is that
we would-
mandated by the city?
We would defer to the city public works director for guidance on exactly how to tie the signals into the rest of the system.
So our standard bike and vehicle detector is a camera system.
Is a camera, and does that
It
detect?
works a lot better, right?
Is,
Yeah, it's more what.
yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah,
totally
that's
100% agree with that. It's better. Some of the cameras seem to get off too, just like sensors did. I don't know why that happens, but so I guess my question is, will the camera then detect bikes in the bike lane? Because one of the problems in the past has been all the sensors were under the cars and bikes just sit there. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of car traffic, so it won't be a big issue. But if a bike's there late at night or whatever, there's nothing worse than sitting there wondering why the heck isn't the light changing.
Because the signals will largely be in order to get cars in and out of the garages. So the default setting will be
Oh,
green for
okay.
shell light.
So it won't be that big an issue.
Yeah, so I think from a bike traffic signal interaction perspective,
It won't be a big deal.
it should be no
Okay.
big deal.
Okay. I just, whenever I hear stop sign going to signal, I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah.
not so great. And then car share, you showed a picture of city car share, and I wanted to ask if that's who the car share, which car share company, do you know yet?
We don't know yet.
Well, I would just put in a vote for city car share, because we have Zipcar, and it would be nice to have some diversity in the city. There's a couple, maybe one or two city car shares, and how many car sharing cars will you have? Do you know?
We're still working on that now.
Okay.
It'll be
Well,
somewhat market driven.
okay, yeah, well, Zipcar started with just a few and it's grown, so clearly there's a demand, so I'm excited that you have that. And then the last thing I have is, you had said something about buffers. Do you mean buffers between parked cars and bike lanes? Like
That's right.
those white
Yeah,
stripes?
So buffer bike lane, you could, given the dimensions that we've got, you have the option for some additional striping to mark off the door zone. So different places have strongly held opinions about exactly how to configure bike lanes next to, the small number of on-street spaces that we have, given the dimensions that we've got.
So-
if you had guidance.
What do you mean by marking the door zone? I
We're
guess I'm
talking
not
about
receiving.
pavement striping.
Yeah, just
Right, but would it be, if I'm in the bike lane, would there be something in the bike lane telling me to move over? Or there would,
No.
the door zone, it would be telling the car to be over and
Yeah, so for
showing
example,
what-
you can have, it's currently 6 for bike and 8 for car. The parking only needs 7,
Mhm.
and the bike, only, needs 5 is fine. So you can take that 2 feet in between and have that be striped off as the door zone to keep the cars towards the curb and to keep the bikes out of the door zone. So it's an option. It also entails some additional maintenance cost for the striping, so some cities don't bother. Some cities instead put the T mark for the on-street spaces out in order to direct the cyclists further away. The research is not terribly conclusive, so it's one of these things where I think we would actually like both staff and BPAC guidance on how you would prefer to have things striped.
I will just say for me that it's a conflict zone, and that is a big concern of mine. I think bike lanes and door zones are just sort of death traps, because it tells bicyclists, go here, and really here.
Bikes will be there.
Well, but it tells bikes to go here, and there's many examples all over the place of bike lanes like this that are right in the door zone
Yep.
and really aren't safe. And if, I ride to the left, but then car drivers get angry because I'm too close to their lane, it creates some conflict. So I think anything that could push that car over farther, any kind of marking that could tell the cars, because, I see how people park. I don't know what they're thinking, that they can just stop their car anywhere, but people tend to, especially if they're in a hurry and they're a rock star parking person, anything that can encourage them to park in, I think would be good, whatever that might be.
Well, I'm sure the city has an ordinance that they have to park a certain distance.
You have to be at least 18.
You have to be
You
within
can't
18
be any
inches of
further
the
than
curb,
18
yeah.
inches.
18 inches.
So 2 feet for
Yeah.
moving car.
Well, that's a foot and a half on the curb, that's,
Well, no, for moving
well, that's the
bike.
furthest you can be.
Yeah, but if you're talking about 7 feet and you're a foot and a half from the curb, you're practically in the bike lane and you're opening your door into the bike lane, I guarantee you.
Yeah, which is,
I wanted to throw my hat in the ring with endorsement for the bus boarding islands as well. We're already, Viking Space has been working with AC Transit on similar projects on the Line 51 corridor improvement project, as well as on the Telegraph Avenue improvement project. So these are going to be becoming more and more common around the area. So by the time this is constructed, it probably won't be the only one out there anyway. So it's, I'm happy to see that happening in Emeryville as well. Really reducing the number of conflicts between bikes and large vehicles that do, cause a substantial amount of the serious injuries, traffic incidents. One of the great things about Shell Mountain currently is that there are very few curb cuts and intersections, so there really aren't that many conflicts between bikes and other vehicles. And also, until the public market update project happened, there was no curbside parking either. And so what that meant was the bike lane was very infrequently blocked because people just weren't thinking of it as a parking space. The bike lane alone wasn't wide enough to get out of traffic. Now you do have that small area in front of the public market that does have curbside parking. And ever since that's there, people have started parking in the bike lane now as well, blocking that. So in addition to having a narrower amount of usable space, 6-foot bike lane basically becomes like 2 to 3 feet of usable space. You're also, encouraging people to start blocking the bike lane by double parking. And this kind of just happens over and over again. So we have a culture of double parking here in the East Bay. But one of the great things about this project, especially if you already have the bus boarding islands, is you're kind of setting yourself up for a great curbside bike lane that's physically protected throughout its length, either by the boarding island or by floating the parallel parked cars out towards the center, similar to what is also happening on the Telegraph Avenue project. And I understand the road width is more minimal, but that's a fallacy. That's not really something that we should be worrying about. The countries where these types of bike lanes are a lot more common, they don't have the buffer between the parked cars and the bike lane. The problem with the door zone when you have the bike lane to the left of the car door is not the conflict the really serious injury doesn't happen when a bike hits a car door. It happens when the bike hits the car door and gets flipped into traffic and gets run over.
That's right.
If you have the bike on the inside, even if there is a car dooring, they're not going to get flipped into traffic. They're going to get flipped onto the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So I understand these concerns. There are no standards in the state for these bikeways currently.
well, there are. I mean, there's an active standards now which are.
Right, not ones that are endorsed by the state yet, though.
I
By
thought that
Caltrans.
was. I thought,
Not officially. They're developing their protected bikeway standards this year. So cities can use whatever they want. And part of the update to the law last year as well that the governor signed does say that cities can use whatever standard they want. And so I would really highly recommend looking into a completely physically protected bike lane on this segment.
So we didn't. We didn't feel comfortable going beyond what's allowed in the NACTO guidelines. And the challenge with the NACTO guidelines, in part because they're responsive to the Americans with Disabilities Act, that the Dutch and the German guidelines don't have to deal with, is the NACTO guidelines require a three-foot buffer. That's the kind of passenger loading area between the on-street spaces and the bike facility. And they recommend a minimum dimension of 6 feet for the bike facility. So that effectively added 10 feet to the right-of-way. And given the challenge of the block size on the east side and the fact that parking garages come in 120-foot increments,
If you've lost 10 feet, you
Yeah.
lose a whole bay of parking, which means the parking garage would have to double in height, which then means a lot more shadow and not as comfortable environment for pedestrians to use.
So how many on-street parking spots are we really talking about?
About a dozen, right?
it's a little bit more.
It's about 20
Yeah.
along Shell Mount.
And how many of those are disabled access or loading parking spots?
We haven't done that level of detail about exactly how to allocate each of the spaces.
Yeah.
So the issue with the on-street spaces is less about contributing to the total supply. I mean, it's less than 1% of the total supply, but more about being able to deliver on a retail program that attracts a diverse array of retailers who tell us that this on-street teaser parking is a really important component of their decision about where we're working.
Yeah. I understand where you're coming from. I just think it's really sad. I mean, the direction that the standards are going right now, 5 or 10 years from now, the NACTO is going to be updated to the point where this would have been a good idea. So it just really seems a shame that we are building facilities that we know are less than they can be just because of
So having been involved in writing the NACTO guidelines,
Right.
I think that the relationship with the disabled community is going to mean a very different set of standards in the United States than in Northern Europe. So I'm not certain that this is an issue that we're going to be able to solve within the 5 to 10 year time frame.
I just wanted to raise something about the teaser parking, in that we don't have parking enforcement here in Emeryville. We don't have meters, we don't have that. So there's nothing to stop the resident from leaving their car there and it never, ever being available to anybody. I mean, it's just,
We do have parking enforcement now.
Yeah, they started that.
You got a parking enforcement officer.
and they're ticketing
Yeah,
people.
they sure are.
And I just wanted
Because
to.
they got 2-hour parking, and one of the things they said when they put in all the 2-hour parking areas was that they were gonna have to have parking enforcement, or there wasn't any point in doing it.
Right,
And
exactly.
Chief James
So
said that
And
they
they're
had
out there every day.
somebody to do it.
And just one last comment. I mean, you seem to be very knowledgeable on the subject. Do you think a raised bike lane, would be any more feasible with the existing disability standards to bring it up to the level of the sidewalk?
It would require an exception, but it would be easier. Well, along the length of Shell Mountain, where there is no on-street parking, there's a lot of that. It is certainly something that would be easier to get a design exception for, to do a sort of Copenhagen style, raised cycle track. It would, it affects the drainage. It's a civil engineering issue. I don't know what the design exception process would be like here. I know there are cities that are experimenting with this, including, I believe, the city of Alameda, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like it's something worth looking into,
Yeah.
especially considering the number of families that we're going to have going through here between the aquatic park, between the Bay Trail and the Bay Bridge Trail. I think this is like a prime area for the city to look into these types of facilities.
Well, I mean, it's, ultimately the street itself is a city street, so, I think we'll want a lot of guidance from the city about exactly how to configure it. In terms of, it being possible to, go through the design approval process, raising portions of it is probably easier than trying to have it all be parking protected.
2 other really quick points. So the elevator on the Shell Mound side, that would be new.
That'd be a new elevator.
Okay. And I think some of the problems with the existing elevator are just inherent to the construction of the elevator. But there are some really great designs out there. The elevator at the Dublin-Pleasanton BART station is one that I think is a really great example. It has double doors.
Yeah.
So bikes just go in one end, and they get to the top, go out the other end, and it's a longer elevator, so you can actually fit a cargo bike in there if necessary.
I think he's with that double doors too.
Yeah, but Dublin-Pleasanton BART is a really good example if you want to have something to work off of. And in terms of the bike station or bike facility that you were thinking as part of, potentially part of one of the tenants here, Bike Alameda operates the bike hub system, which is in charge of all the bike stations in the East Bay as well as planned ones in San Francisco and in the Caltrain corridor. So they'd be a great group to partner with to see what options are available for this facility too.
Right, and to help with the design details.
Exactly.
I just had a couple things. I've talked to folks at the public market about bike lockers, and because of all the construction that's planned, it's just put off. So I was just wondering if that's part of
We're
the,
looking at having bike lockers or bike valet parking or something like that, something beyond just the commuter lot.
yeah, I mean, if you have a bike station, obviously, that's a big part of it, and if you have, bike lane access, and so, yeah. I just
Yeah, Marcy, and you and I have been talking
Yeah.
about it, but I think in light of where we were with this, we wanted to develop these plans a little bit further, which is why we weren't quite ready to make that commitment yet. But I
Right.
think that to the extent those grant funds are available down the road, that's definitely something we would, or even if the city is continuing to look at that option, we'd be happy to explore it.
I just thought since we're at the BPAC, we might as well throw that in the mix,
Yeah,
since all these other amenities are being discussed. And then the other thing, I know I've seen stairs, where there's a bike channel along them. And so I was just wondering if you considered that for the grand staircase to have, where you walk along, but your bike is right next to you. So it's not like having a big ramp, it's just a channel.
Current one is
16th
too
Street
steep, right?
16th Street BART has it, and it's pretty steep, but it works.
Yeah, right.
How do you deal with the railing so that?
The
folks
railing's
can-
there.
So you can still reach it for people
Yep.
or?
You
Yeah, it's
can
pretty
walk with the railing, but you basically, you have to lean your bike out. The railing isn't an issue because you have handlebars, you couldn't,
Right.
it doesn't really get in the way.
Yeah, it's actually pretty straightforward. It could be something we would do in addition to the elevator.
Yeah, we can look into that.
I would also add, that building where that stair comes down the detailed design is being done by another architect and a landscape architect, and we'd be happy to relay that idea to them.
Yeah, I think 16th Street BART is a good example, one that works quite well. It has to be on both sides, so there's an up and a down.
Is there also one at the Ed Roberts campus at Ashby that was designed
Yes.
into the project? Yeah, so that, because the 16th Street was a retrofit, it'd be better to
Right.
get one that was.
It's in the stairwell, on the east side of that one.
Yeah.
I have a question about the street and bus capacity in the future. Say the project is successful, and say there's additional in the neighborhood, like the Nady complex really wants to build high density, and we're gonna have even more buses on Shellmount. Is there enough room to have additional bus capacity so that there's just physically enough space? One bus might have to pass another, but there's, enough.
There won't be.
Bus
space.
won't have to wait on bus to get into the bus zone, that there's enough potential for the future.
Yeah, so the bus capacity is limited basically by the stops rather than by, you need to have buses going every 30 seconds or so in order to need more than just a single travel lane. So one of the advantages with having the on-street parking and that brief stretch on both sides as we have it is that it gives us curb expansion zone for adding length to the bus stop. So you can have 3 or 4 buses stopping at the same time. It would be hard for me to imagine a situation where you'd have a San Francisco Market Street level bus service that would need 4 lanes, and even San Francisco is considering trying to figure out how to subtract 2 lanes off of Market Street. So yeah, in terms of capacity, we don't need more than the travel lanes.
Okay. So we're way behind our schedule here.
These are great comments.
Can I just ask a really quick question?
Sure, please.
And I think the answer may be that this is up to the city, but on your drawings, you had green bike lanes? They were all green, and is that planned that they would be painted green?
And that's the plan.
Okay,
You
that-
can't do
that's
that
great.
against federal law. You can't do it anymore. Against federal law to have a green bike lane. Oakland has to take them out.
Is that true?
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
No, he's just referring to the super sharrows on 40th Street.
That's right.
Not for
Not for
standard
bike
bike
lanes.
It's
lanes.
like a painted bike lane in the middle of a traffic lane, right?
Yeah,
That you're
but,
talking about?
okay,
I
but
always
a
thought that
regular
was-
painted bike.
I always thought that was misleading to
Yeah.
begin with.
So a regular bike lane can be painted green.
Okay, so, let's make my little Greenway crossing, item